Welcome to the Nuclear Snail channel. In this episode I'm gonna teach you how to make this, a post-apocalyptic pauldron, also known as shoulder pad or shoulder armor. Both you and I know it's not an armor, it wouldn't protect you. But don't tell anyone, it looks cool, so let's make it anyway. Before I rewind time and show you how I made this exact piece, please keep in mind that my channel is all about you using your brain and skill to improvise. So if some component that I'm showing here is not available to you, find a replacement, find something else. What I want to show you is the basic principle of making a shoulder pad or pauldron, and then you can improvise and create whatever you want. Because that's how post-apocalyptic crafting goes. Before we start by rewinding time to before this was made, and showing you how this was made, I want to talk about why pauldrons are such a great idea, especially for the post-apocalyptic genre. Number one, it's kind of an established post-apocalyptic classic piece. You will find a lot of raiders and whatnot with it in games and movies everywhere. It just kind of established itself as such. Number two, it's very light, it's comparatively easy to make, it's not hot wearing this. It's basically super practical, while at the same time giving you the most bang for your buck. See, it's decorating your shoulder and your upper chest. So those areas are really important, because people are looking at your face and your shoulders and upper chest. So by decorating those with the lightest, but at the same time pimpiest part possible, you get out the best out of your costume. So it's a really good effort and inconvenience to effect ratio. So pauldrons or shoulder pads are great. Here are the supplies that I'm gonna be using. A leather belt. Doesn't need to be leather. In fact, it doesn't need to be one with a buckle. It can be just, a closed loop, if you can find something like this at all. But it all starts with a belt like this. And you want to position your belt something like this with the buckle, if one exists, down here. Don't do this. Now this right here is a knee protector for roller skating. It's already broken, so that's kind of a nice look. You can find these everywhere. I mean, every post-apocalyptic beginner has these or will have them in short time. So this will go on the shoulder. Then this right here is the top part of a German military boot. So my boots died and I've scavenged what I could, and we're gonna be using this to protect the upper arm. And finally right here I have a piece of leather, as well as some already pre-distressed, pre-torn piece of red fabric. I'll get to that part in a second. Of course it doesn't have to be red, and of course it doesn't have to be leather. As I've said, you can improvise this, it's just an example build, but I'm gonna be using this. I'll get in a sec to why the form of this is important and what it does. And if something is not clear in general, as you watch the whole video it will become clear why I take a component or another and why I do the things the way I'm doing them. Now these parts are not all the parts I'm going to be using for this build, but these are all the parts I need for the base. And after I'm done with the base, we're going to scavenge something from our junk crate and add that as decorations, as details. That's the really fun part. But we need to make the base first. Take a mirror or a camera, like I'm doing right now, and find this seam of your t-shirt, or just, the median line of your body, of your shoulder, and put a mark there. This way you know where the top is. That's important, because that is going to be the center of our work. Now that we have marked our belt, and here it is, it's time to talk about this thing. So I scavenged this from a leather sofa. You see, it's a piece of leather with some foam padding underneath. Again, it doesn't have to be leather. It can be some other sturdy materials such as canvas. And of course you can also take a piece of foam separately, cut it out and put it underneath this. Again, it's all about improvisation. What this is going to do, it's going to lie under the belt on my shoulder, and it's going to build the base of this piece. And what we do now is take another layer which is slightly bigger. Now this fabric doesn't need to be sturdy. In fact, it should be soft. And you also are not limited to taking just one layer. You can take as many layers as you like. And then you do the following. You flip the whole thing. You see right here that this red fabric, which I've pre-distressed, and if you're new to the channel, I have videos about how to achieve effects like this, so I'm not repeating it here. You layer it like this, and you see that this red fabric is bigger than our base piece made of leather. Now it's important, at least for this build, that this is a hard edge. It's cut like this with scissors, it's sharp, while this is softly fading out, so to say. It's torn, it's dissolving. If you watched my post-apocalyptic costuming basics video, this is a soft termination, while this is a hard termination. Okay, now we actually do it the other way around. We take it like this, and now we flip it over, like this. Now I take my awl, and I start putting holes into this sandwich. There it is. And here I'm using bolts and washers. You do not need nuts just yet. And it's important to go from this side, actually. The one that's flipped over. Like this. You will see why in a sec. It's because our belt is going to be connecting here on top. So I like putting a bolt around every 10 centimeters with the same distance of about 1 centimeter to this seam to make the whole thing a bit more orderly, because order is one of the things, is actually the thing that the most post-apocalyptic beginners overlook. You need to have some order in your post-apocalyptic costumes. Now it looks like this. And those bolts are holding those two layers together. This side is going to go against the body, so it doesn't matter how it looks. And what we do now is we take our belt, open it, unless you have a closed loop, in which case you will just have to twist it. And now we find the center of this thing, at least approximately, and align it like this. So remember, this marking is the top of our shoulder. So this will wrap around our body. If we look from the top, which you are right now, this will go on top of my shoulder like this, wrapping around the part of my chest and back. Now some of these holes have just matched auto-magically. That's a coincidence. All the holes that don't match, you just make your own. Where is this bolt touching the belt? Right there. Okay, here goes the awl. The reason I'm doing this with bolts instead of rivets is because during a prototyping creative process like this, you might want to add some layers maybe, or remove some layers, or basically change something. So bolts allow you to change a lot of things up until the end and even after that. I mean, sure, you can open the rivet, you can grind it open, but it's a lot easier to prototype using bolts. Now, I don't like how this bolt is sitting, it's all skewed, so I'm actually gonna make this hole a lot larger to fit it. Okay, now it's attached to the belt. And that's what it looks like by now. See, here is our top marking. Really simple, and really the hard part is done. Now we're gonna add the other parts, such as this. It's gonna go on top of here, right there. And we're gonna be using those bolts, which still can accept new layers, to hold that armor piece in place. So basically a lot of costume making and prop making is layering stuff on top of each other, and that's exactly what I'm doing here, or for the most of my works. What we want to do first is remove unnecessary parts from the things we're going to be using to craft further. Now, it's a very common mistake amongst beginners, myself when I was a beginner included, to keep a lot of unnecessary stuff, unnecessary layers, because they look cool or might come in handy or whatever. What I do nowadays is create a solid base and then add some fluff to that solid base, some decorations. And everything that stands in the way of that solid base and its pure form and function gets removed. Such as this. I really need just this part. So we know that this direction is out. So we're gonna have these spikes, or this broken end of it, pointing out. Note that these are not dangerous, it's just some soft plastic. So I can't hurt anyone with this. And we see that these two bolts offer themselves for attachment. If it wasn't the case, I would have just added another bolt right here and be done with it. But I have two nice bolts here in place already. So what I'm gonna do is simply this. Hole number one. Fiddle, 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 fiddle. There we go. And hole number two, it doesn't even need an awl. Just need to cut some threads right here with the waste blade, carefully. There we go. Now I'm adding some loose washers and nuts on top of this. I'm not tightening yet, because probably I'm gonna add something on top, but just so this part stays secure. Now we want to add this upper arm protector, aka the top part of an old army boot. And I want this intact side to be facing down my arm, which means that this has to connect to the upper armor, to the shoulder armor. So it has to go like this, and I want it to be underneath so that my shoulder armor is on top of everything. I'll flip this. I'll give it a bit of overlap, like this. There we go. Center to center. Quite easy to determine the center because of this Velcro patch right here and this, whatever it's called, on the boot. I just overlap them. And then I use my awl. And you guessed it, bolts, nuts, washers, the usual. And secure it in place with a loose nut. Not tightening yet, because there is no need yet. Here's what it looks like. And you can see it is giving me a bit of trouble as I move. And it's also a bit too low, to be honest. You see that gap between the shoulder armor and the upper arm armor? I don't like it. So what I'm gonna do is just move it up by about 5 to 10 centimeters. And I'm also going to be using more than just one screw to fixate it, so that it's not so loose. I mean, it's not so horrible once you put it on, but it's just flopping around here on one bolt. So I need more bolts because I want this to be more solid. Alright, so I'm gonna undo this. And I think this much overlap will do the job. The reason I'm showing you this is because as you build your piece, you will inevitably run into things that don't go according to plan. And solving those is the fun and the challenge of post-apocalyptic crafting, or any sort of crafting. Nice overlap right here. But I want these two pieces to belong together, to hold together real well. So I'm punching another hole right here. So this is a lot better. There is a nice overlap, so these two pieces go together. At the same time, they're flexible enough. Now another thing I could do is layer it like this, so that this base layer goes on top of this arm protector, and fixate it with a bolt right here. But I don't necessarily need to do that, so I won't, because I'm lazy. Alright, so the base is done, which means we can begin with the fun part, adding some details made from junk that we scavenged from the junk crate. And yeah, after that, of course, gonna have to, add some nuts, tighten the bolts, cut the bolts, distress the whole thing so it's not shiny at the bolts, and so on and so forth. But first we do the fun part, adding some decorations. So you could add anything to this, you could paint this, you could add some stencils, you could add whatever junk to this, because it's, again, a nice base. You just add a bolt and you bolt something to this base. That's it. So let's see what we find. Check this out. It's an old CPU cooler. I think this will look really cool. And then I'm gonna add some more decorations to this large metal plate. What I also want to add, which is not a decoration but a nice addition, which is not a must but makes things better, is some sort of a belt that goes around my upper arm right here, so that when I move this can't happen, because right now it can. I mean, usually it doesn't, and the arm goes back into place, or the protector goes back into place, but I want to have this secured with a belt. Now first to the upper arm belt. So luckily there is a loop right here, because I'm using the shoe. If there wasn't, I could just attach a belt like this with a bolt. Done. So I have a length of a stretch fabric right here, a stretch belt. It doesn't need to be stretched, I just like it. And since I already have a loop and don't have to use a bolt, I just loop it like this, through here. And then I just put it around like this. Of course you could also make something that closes and opens and all that, but it's not necessary in this case. This stretch thing will just, I'll just fit my arm through that and it will hold it all in place as it should be. I'm taking this and bending it down, putting it here. And let's say around here is where I will fixate it all in place. Alright, and yes, it can go off rails down here. So yeah, never mind what I said about one bolt. It looks like this will need two to be really neat. I mean, you could ignore it and most of the time it will stay in place between these shoelace holders. But I just want it to be really fast to put on and off without worrying too much about things going where they're not supposed to go. There it is. So this is staying in place. Now this metallic part right here, which is, by the way, not the perfect candidate because it has some sharp edges here and stuff, but it's still, for me, it's safe enough. So I'm gonna use some of the existing bolts to attach it, and you see there are just those metallic fins right here, so I don't even need to drill holes. I'll just spread them apart with my awl. So here it is. Spread apart, spread apart. There we go. Now this bolt is bothering me. So what I'm gonna do now is add a washer, add a nut, and I'm gonna tighten it. And now I'm just gonna cut it off. So we're done with this bolt. It's not gonna be accepting any more layers. apply some Loctite, and I don't need to be sanding this bolt because it's not going to be exposed. It's going to be covered by this processor part. So here is another side. I can see the bolt in between the ribs. I spread the ribs apart, and there we go. So it's coming on nice and easy, just like this. And there we go. It's now attached. So let's put this on with this new arm belt. So that's the first thing I'm doing. Sliding my arm right through. And as you can see, it's not going anywhere. Now just closing the belt here. Tight enough, but not too tight. And here is what it looks like so far. Now, of course, the ones of you with a keener eyes see that this surface right here is missing some stencil, logo, decoration, or some more detailing layers, basically. And I also don't like how this is looking. Like, I need to cut this piece off, which I'm gonna do right now. There we go. Using multiple cuts, and also gonna have to redistress this edge so it doesn't look so straight cut. Better. This is kind of annoying too. Yeah, that's a nice form. So it's a concentrating form. It's all focusing on this point right here. See, it's all flowing. And before it was like just a weird bump. Of course, we could also add something to the back. Not gonna do this for this build because I think you get the idea of, you know, attaching cool looking junk details to your existing base. Like, you could attach something like this or anything else to that surface, or you could just apply a stencil. And there is still one thing I don't like about the mobility of this, and it is when I bring my arm across the chest, it's bunching up right here. So I've marked with these white dots this corner, which I will now remove. And done! As you see, this is now a lot more agile in that area. It should actually be like this, with the shoulder guard sitting on top of your shoulder, not like this. The steps I'm not showing here is securing the bolts, applying the stencils, as well as some additional detailing layers, as well as grunging the whole thing up. There are separate videos on my channel about those topics, so watch those if you haven't yet. And I've also added this Saladin patch to the back, because Saladin has just sent me those patches, and it fits just perfectly. So yeah, here's what it looks like in the end. Come on, camera. There's the surface effect on the shiny and chrome. If you do chrome stuff, like, of course it's okay to use shiny and chrome stuff, but dust it up a bit so it's shiny and chrome and not shiny and lazy. Now you have a basic idea of how to make yourself a post-apocalyptic pauldron. It might be something like this, it might be something different entirely, and I want to see what you make. Post it onto my Facebook page. Also, if you don't want to craft yourself or can't craft yourself at the moment, I do offer custom commissions, so again, contact me on Facebook for that, not here, on Facebook. Subscribe to the channel, and if you're already subscribed and are a regular viewer, consider supporting me on Patreon. It's the first link in the video description. I'm making almost nothing at all from YouTube, so my Patreon supporters are the ones that keep this channel going and developing. Until next time, survive, stay cool, stay stylish. I've been working on a new line, you know, to say goodbye. This doesn't do it, does it? Until the next episode, hail the snail.